happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And in the news this week, in the BSA, the Boy Scouts of America, they've semi-embraced out-gay scouts and scoutmasters, but they won't go all the way.
There are many ramifications to this story, and get out a pencil and paper because we need some action from you.
You can weigh in.
Exactly. Now, in other news, President Obama has announced that he wants to include foreign-born same-sex partners of Americans in his immigration reform framework. But will the Congress let him put it in there?
You know how John Kerry became the Secretary of State? Well, he was a senator from Massachusetts. The seat opened up, and Barney Frank wanted the seat, and he didn't get it.
In marriage news, the Rhode Island House of Representatives, delegates, whatever they call it there,
House,
led by a gay man, passed marriage equality by a wide margin. But the anti-gay marriage Democratic leader of the state Senate is still opposed.
Yeah. We're going with this now? Professional basketball star Kenneth the Manimal, that's his nickname, how do you say his last name? Fareed of the Denver Nuggets has made a pitch for civil unions in Colorado with his two moms. And we're going to show it to you.
We are. It's quite charming. Thank you. And meanwhile, the Senate Judiciary Committee of the Colorado Legislature has passed a civil unions bill.
Okay. Actor-singer Jim Nabors, who you might remember from the Gomer Pyle Show and singing the national anthem at the Indy 500 every year.
If you're as old as us.
Well, he still sings the national anthem. Anyway, he has come out in order to marry his male partner, but he doesn't want to get involved in the debate over same-sex marriage.
See, Jodie Foster's looking better and better, isn't she?
Yes.
Some terrible news of various killings of gay men in New York City recently, and the police have released a sketch of suspects in the murder a few weeks ago of gay activist Lou Rispoli in Queens. We'll show you the sketch.
And another gay man, David, either Rangel, I think, or Rangel, is found murdered in his Jackson Heights apartment, probably the victim of someone he met online. And still another, Charles Romo, is found murdered in Hamilton Heights, possibly by a partner, someone he knew.
Yeah.
So we're going to, one of the things we're going to do, in addition to getting your pencils and papers out to talk to the Boy Scouts, is to, keep yourself safe as possible when you engage in online dating.
A very good reminder. In Canada, Ontario's Kathleen Wynne is the first out lesbian or gay premier or governor of a province in Canada.
The United Kingdom's Parliament has scheduled the debate on its gay marriage bill and it's just for England and Wales, but activist Peter Tatchell says it will give more rights to gay couples than straight couples.
And the problem is?
Yes, it's about time.
Reparations.
Okay.
Andy is going to review Martin Moran's new play, All the Rage.
Yes, okay.
All right. But we start with the Boy Scouts because that seems to be the headline this week.
This was a story that was broken by the out-gay reporter from NBC, Pete Williams, who was basically forced to come out 25 years ago by Mike Signorelli. Anyway, he's a justice correspondent. He found out about the fact. And, this is interesting about the Boy Scouts because, yes, they reaffirmed the policy just a couple of months ago.
They did,
but
July.
They were also cracking down just about a week ago on some troop that was going to allow for an out-gay scoutmaster. So.
Well, let's go back a little in history. 10 years ago, James Dale, an out-gay Eagle Scout, I think so, check me on. I'll check the research here. But James Dale went to the Supreme Court, represented by Evan Wolfson, to complain about the Boy Scouts policy of excluding out gay Eagle Scouts and leaders and members because he was in New Jersey, and New Jersey has an anti-discrimination law.
Yeah, we won, I think, unanimously at the New Jersey Supreme Court.
Exactly. They said this organization cannot discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation. But then the Boy Scouts appealed it to the Supreme Court of the United States, which said, in all its infinite wisdom,
unanimously,
this is a private organization one of whose core principles is religious or whatever, and therefore they are allowed
being morally straight is what you say when you take your oath. I was not a scout.
Yeah, and therefore they're allowed to make their own membership decisions, but they are private. There then ensued the silver lining, which was that local governments, which had given special privileges to the Scouts for renting properties and various other things, were then allowed to say, oh, well, you're a private organization. So now we can decide that if we don't like you because you don't meet our non-discrimination requirements, we will no longer give you special privileges.
Very few did.
Well, Berkeley, California did. They were the first.
Very few. And in
ongoing debates,
and in Philadelphia, where the Scouts were getting a building practically free. Ultimately, the judges said, no, you got to keep giving it to this thing to them virtually for free, and we haven't gotten very far on that. The other thing that happened was they kept trying to fudge it a little bit prior to this new decision that they haven't actually made a decision. The thing we're talking about, even in New York, they would say, if the locals have no problem with it, we're not going to object. They said that. And this is what New York said.
The National
said
that?
National didn't say that. New York
local troops said that.
Said, we leave it up to the local troop. The problem is no one tested that position.
Well, every time a local troop or a local organization tried to write into their policies a non-discrimination policy, the National would shoot them down and threaten to revoke their charters and whatever. If there was a don't ask, don't tell policy, then they could slip by. But the minute anybody went public with it or tried to codify it, they were out.
So what the Scouts are supposedly proposing now and are going to vote on is we are going to give you a local option. If your troop or your agency for the state or whatever it is, everybody wants to do it, then you can do it. But we're not going to force anybody to do it if they don't want to allow gays.
Well, wait a minute. This sounds a little backwards, because what the National is saying is we will no longer impose a ban on out gay scouts or leaders.
But
we're getting rid of it.
But we will allow discrimination to continue at the local level.
Which is sort of the reverse.
And, James Dale spoke out about this and said, come on, this is a bunch of nonsense.
We'll get to that in a second.
All right.
Wait, I want to do this coherently.
Right. Go ahead.
There are about 100,000 Scout units, Boy Scout units around the country. 2/3 of them are sponsored by faith-based organizations, primarily
not always, mostly conservative, but not
mostly always. Mormon and Catholic churches.
I mean, the Methodists are welcoming this.
Yes, but they are in a minority of the faith-based organizations sponsoring Scout troops. 23% are sponsored by civic organizations like the local Rotary Club or the Elks or whatever. 8% by educational organizations. So this is going to end up with a real patchwork around the country of who continues to have a discriminatory policy and who doesn't. And the Nationals are really abdicating responsibility by kicking it down to a local option because they don't want to have to deal with the conservative religious organizations that are screaming about this policy change. And as we've often
pointed out, in Mormonism, the Boy Scouts is essentially the youth program for boys who are Mormon. They're expected to join the Scouts, and they're Mormon troops, essentially. Now, of course, what this has done, and maybe they haven't thought this completely through, is they have given up that thing you spoke about in the beginning about the rationale at the Supreme Court about this being one of their core things. If it's no longer one of their core beliefs that you have to kick gays out, people that may be able to bring lawsuits against local troops. And the local troops are very concerned about this, many of which are resistant to allowing gays in anywhere.
Well, the New York Times, I thought, did an excellent job of noticing this little wrinkle in it and wrote an editorial about it. Their overall stance in their editorial was this is not enough from the National Boy Scouts. They have to impose this non-discrimination policy, assert a value system that is universal. But what they said was, the new policy would, however, undermine the rationale the Supreme Court voiced in 2000 when it affirmed the right of the Scouts to discriminate against gay people.
13 years ago.
13, yes. The 5-4 ruling turned on the court's acceptance.
Oh, 5-4.
Yeah, turned on the court's acceptance of the Scouts' claim that being anti-gay was a core part of its mission and that its freedom of association right trumped any state non-discrimination rules. Now that the group is on the verge of making discrimination optional, it can no longer claim that discrimination is a core purpose, and therefore state non-discrimination rules should apply to the Scouts. The halfway policy change would inevitably invite litigation.
And I apologize for calling it a unanimous decision. What I was thinking of was a similar case, which was the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Boston,
yes,
which won the right to discriminate unanimously from the Supreme Court, saying you're a private parade, this is
right,
speech,
right,
which is why I get so upset when even in New York, our city council, led by an out lesbian, Chris Quinn, who we'll talk more about later, funds local parades that are discriminatory.
But doesn't march in them.
She boycotts them.
Yeah.
But we should not be funding them with city money. And I just want to say something to the Scouts and all you, if you're all upset about this decision, the moving of the Scouts, they ought to just look at the way Catholic Charities and all these religious groups are funded, and they all say we're not going to discriminate. And of course, nobody comes out at these places. You know, prove me wrong about that. I mean, if they just got rid of the discrimination policy, it's not like in these Mormon troops you're going to have an outflowing of gay people.
I don't know.
Well,
where, you know, let many
it's a brave new world.
Flowers blossom.
I mean, even Jim Nabors came out
All
this
right,
week.
so why did the Scouts do this? There are several reasons.
They're losing money.
Exactly. That is the main reason.
That's always the reason.
Corporations
follow the money.
Are withdrawing their support.
Yes. Now,
UPS, Intel, they're all pulling out.
So let me ask you a question.
Plus, they're getting a lot of pushback from local troops that are fighting them. They're getting a lot of bad publicity from, like, the lesbian mom who was kicked out as a troop leader, and the Eagle Scouts who are being refused status because they're gay.
And the gay groups went into celebration mode on this, GLAAD and HRC and all these groups. But are they going to accept this halfway policy in terms of calling off the dogs on the boycotts of the corporations if they don't just lift the policy? Or are they going to?
It'll move to the local level. They'll call off the dogs on the nationals, and they'll move to the local level.
And say, don't fund the discriminatory troops.
Yes, it'll become a local action thing. Now, this also comes at a time when GLAAD announced a lot of anger at the National Geographic cable channel because they're now running a new series called Are You Tougher Than a Boy Scout? And GLAAD was demanding that they put a disclaimer on the series saying, by the way, the Boy Scouts is a disgusting, discriminatory organization.
Sounds like the disclaimer that was on the movie Cruising with Al Pacino. This is not representative of the gay world.
So, we told you to get a pencil and paper, pen. Here is the deal. The Boy Scouts, after announcing this and getting a big firestorm of reaction on all sides, decided, wait a minute, maybe we better organize the public reaction to this. So they have put up a email address and a phone number for you to contact them and let them know how you feel.
You can call them at 972-580-2330, or you can email them at
nationsupportcentral@scouting.org. Now, I have done both these things. And when you call, the operator answers and immediately says, are you for or against the policy change?
Well, what if I have a nuanced position?
You just say for. Write them an email with your
I'm
nuance.
not for it. I want them to lift the whole thing.
See, now this is where you're going to be in trouble. If you say against, that is going to be recorded as I'm a Mormon and I hate gay people.
What to do?
You have to say for.
Not all Mormons hate gay people.
I wrote them an email at this Nation Support Center at scouting.org, and I said, I applaud what you've done so far. I want you to go farther
there you go.
and assert an actual value system that would apply to everyone. And by the way, what about those atheists?
Yes.
Let them in too.
I haven't read anything about what's going to, because that was the other thing, is that if you don't assert a belief in God, that whoever
there was a big lawsuit about that from a boy.
Quite frankly, there was also stuff about why don't just have scouting and have girls, because the Girl Scouts already allow lesbians and
transgender
and
scouts.
They're
far more progressive.
They're women.
And they sell cookies.
Yes, good ones. All right,
Love
but
those thin
not
mints.
everybody's happy. The American Family Association, get this, and they're alert about this, said this will allowing homosexual scoutmasters and boys in the program, it will destroy the legitimacy and the security of this iconic institution. You scumbuckets now over there at the AFA, acting like this will somehow imperil children if you do this.
Well,
you are just
well,
too
another
much.
of the problems the Boy Scouts was having was the revelation of all these files of protected child molesters, as in church situations.
And being out as a protection against that, of course.
Yes,
against,
of course.
if people are, they can't, they're never going to pull anything.
All right.
More about which later.
Yes, but that's it for the Boy Scouts, I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our president.
Barack Obama.
Yeah. So he announced, so the Senate crowd, the bipartisan group, announced a plan for immigration reform.
Mm-hmm.
But what caught the eye of LGBT activists was that there was no provision in the announced compromise for same-sex couples, one of whom was not an American citizen, to be allowed to stay together in this country.
And this is supposed to
as
be
straight
Chuck
couples.
Schumer's deal
Exactly,
from
and
New York.
he was one of the compromises.
And John McCain was asked about this, and he says, "Oh no, we're not talking about that."
That's John McCain.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah. So the White House was asked about this, and they were much more forthright than they usually are in answer to gay questions. Jay Carney, the press secretary, he says, the president supports inclusion of same-sex binational couples in any plan for immigration reform. He supports their rights to be treated equally and stay together, and there is no reason to think that the president's plan would not include such a provision.
Given this House of Representatives, I will be gobsmacked if comprehensive immigration reform gets through.
In any form.
I understand that Republicans have a deep investment in getting a little better on this issue, because that's one of the reasons they lost the last presidential election.
Because they want to elect Marco Rubio.
They're so full of nutcases in the House, I don't know. So I don't know if it's going to get, and the gay thing, I mean, I appreciate the fact that the president spoke out for us. But I fear it's going to be one of those things that they're going to allow to go by the wayside,
well,
as happened in the past.
It certainly could
with
happen.
Legislation.
I'll give you the other possible scenario, which is that there is a great desire now from the majority of the Congress, if not all the fringe nutcases, to pass something here, because the Republicans desperately want credit for something, because they have gotten nowhere with their obstructionist policies.
And they might be a little nicer to us for a change.
Well, if the package is big enough, important enough, occasionally our stuff can get included.
Yes.
So it's not outside the realm of possibility.
And we were dissing John McCain, but I overlooked the fact that at the inauguration, when President Obama spoke out for us and said our journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like anyone else under the law, John McCain was observed applauding.
He probably thought he was distracted. But the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force held its annual Creating Change conference in Atlanta last week, and one of the things that they featured was a video from the president speaking directly to the LGBT community. Not in huge detail and certainly not about immigration, but we thought you would enjoy watching the president speak directly to us.
I've always said that the change we need in this country, real change, doesn't come from Washington. It comes from folks like you. Change has always come from ordinary Americans who sit in or stand up or march to demand it. And the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force has been a partner at the forefront of that movement for 40 years. Many of you have dedicated your lives to securing for all Americans the sanctuary of words in our founding creed, that all are created equal, and all must enjoy the same rights and the same protections. Decades ago, in the dark days when most doctors declared being gay a mental disorder, you organized and rallied to change their minds. When thousands suffered in the shadows during the early days of the AIDS epidemic, you cast a bright light on their pain. And today, you're helping lead the way to a future where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, no matter who they love or where they come from, where everyone has access to affordable health care, and where everyone who works hard and plays by the rules has the chance to earn their citizenship. With your help, we will continue the journey to perfect our union. The work will be hard, the road will be long, but I'm more confident than ever that we will reach a better future, as long as Americans like you keep reaching for justice, and all of us keep marching together.
Footnote to the state of the inaugural address, where so famously the phrase Seneca Falls to Selma to Stonewall jumped out. Turns out that actually was first used in a commencement speech at Barnard last year. So
well, he was speaking in front of Evan Wolfson, who was also getting an award that day.
Exactly. So and we should also note that the transgender community is beginning to notice and get a little upset at the fact that this new construction of how to say gay without saying gay, the who you love, excludes them, because for them it's who you are. So they would like a little.
But transgender folks also have issues with who, in terms of who they can marry. Oftentimes, because it varies by state.
That's an issue. But in terms of them being discriminated against in general in employment or housing or whatever, it is about who they are, and they are beginning to say, you know, it would be nice if that were a little more clear and specific.
And staying on President Obama for a moment, you may have seen these national ads against Chuck Hagel invoking LGBT issues or gay issues, I don't know exactly what the ads say.
Big phony put-up job.
By secret donors, and you know, it seems to me these are probably defense contractors who are worried about Hagel coming in and slashing the
Sheldon Adelson. Sheldon Adelson.
You don't. Neither of us knows. No, but again, I always say, follow the money.
Exactly, Sheldon Adelson. And a number of organizations, including the Human Rights Campaign and OutServe Service Members Legal Defense Network, are losing patience with the Defense Department on these partner benefits.
Hey, they just allowed women in combat. What do you want to do? I mean, yes, it would be great if they did it all, especially before Panetta leaves and Hagel has to do it.
Well, I'll take it from anyone, but it is, they said when Don't Ask, Don't Tell passed, they said they were going to study this, and it's now over a year later.
They should, and they're also having to defend against all these lawsuits around birth control covering that.
Yeah.
This religious freedom thing, which is going to stalk us, go to the Supreme Court. It's a mess.
But meanwhile, the woman...
And they're standing up on that.
The woman we told you about at Fort Bragg, the spouse of a lesbian member of the military, who's been having all this trouble being a member of the club, the Spouses Club there. Well, the Spouses Club has changed its mind and says she can be a full member. She, by the way, the lesbian couple, have a 2-year-old son and a newborn daughter. And the Ashley Broadway, the spouse of the military member, has just been elected in an online vote as the Fort Bragg Military Spouse of the Year.
Things are moving so fast, we cannot keep up with it on Gay USA.
She's now eligible to be the National Military Spouse of the Year. We'll keep you up to date on that voting.
Now, we should talk a little bit about what's going on with the Supreme Court cases around same-sex marriage.
Oh, okay.
Because the proponents of Prop 8, which bans same-sex marriage in California, which they won in a referendum in 2008, are now citing the words of President Obama to buttress their position. And that's why a lot of people are pressuring the administration to come in on our side on the Prop 8 case, which they have not done because the president has repeatedly said, I want to leave this up to the states. Because I guess because he doesn't want it to move too fast, and I guess he doesn't necessarily want to see a sweeping decision that would declare a universal right to same-sex marriage in the United States.
Well, I'm sure he would love to see that, but he has moved cautiously on all these things, and that's his stance at this moment too. And I can't have a huge. I predict he's right on it. Let me put it that way. But the Westboro Baptist Church has submitted an amicus brief in the Prop 8 case.
I didn't read it, did you?
I skimmed it. It's all about how it's important to know that God needs America to be a straight society, and citing a lot of Bible verses.
Well, they got a lot of lawyers in that group. Now, March 26th at the Supreme Court, this is when they're going to hear arguments on Prop 8, and then DOMA is going to be heard the next day. The National Organization for Marriage has announced a big rally there. Have we got one scheduled on our side?
We are talking about the various ways to combat their rally, including that everybody should wear red shirts. I'm prepared. Because that makes us easy to identify, and it's the color of love and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
But there's a lot of talk going on. So there will certainly be action around the Supreme Court on those days.
But our old friend Fred Karger, who's this gay man who ran for the Republican nomination for president last time, didn't get too far, but he was out there. He has exposed the fact that at the National Organization for Marriage, Brian Brown, who heads it, makes $500,000 a year. I mean, that's
he works very hard.
That's an insane amount of.
He's a one-man band.
He even calls me back sometimes. But that's an insane amount of money for someone working for this type of an organization.
It's more than the President of the United States makes.
And you should know, if you're given your money, a lot of which comes from right-wing organizations like Amway, the DeVos family. So you should know where your money is going, into Brian Brown's pocket.
Whose money?
If you
buy Amway products?
I'm saying, yes, if you buy Amway products, or if I'm saying for the people who are monitoring this show from the right wing, that you are being rolled for Brian Brown's benefit.
All these movements, the anti-abortion movement, the anti-gay movement, basically have been constructed as money-raising operations.
It's a jobs program.
It is, and they moved
on.
Are you
against small business?
They moved on from abortion to us when they were not able to raise as much money against abortion.
And P.S., they're actually having more success these days fighting abortion around the country.
They're going back to that because now they're losing trying to raise money against us. It's a roller coaster.
Right.
The development in the Supreme Court cases is that Vicki Jackson, the Harvard law professor who was hired by the Supreme Court to argue on the standing question in these cases.
Who has a right to do the sides even have a right to bring these cases? Right. Is there a case as far as the court is concerned?
Well, she has submitted her brief, and she says that the Department of Justice lacks standing because they agreed with the district court in the Windsor case.
They switched sides.
Right, so you can't appeal a decision that you won.
Right. Which would
there's no injury to you.
Which would mean what in terms of the case? That Edie Windsor gets her money?
Evidently, I think so. The other thing is she says that the Bipartisan Legal Action Group, whatever the hell it is, the House of Representatives John Boehner operation, also lacks standing because Congress can only defend its own prerogatives. And this is not close enough to their own operations, and that both houses, the House and the Senate, must be involved in a decision to operate in a case like this. So we'll see whether this...
It's not just got to be bipartisan, it's got to be bicameral.
Exactly. Someone wrote me an email this week and said, so what about this argument by Vicki Jackson? Is this going to hold water? And my reply was, look, I've been to court enough times, being prosecuted myself for civil disobedience, to have figured out something early on. The court will do what it wants to do.
Yes.
If it wants to decide these cases, it will find a rationale to give standing and do so. If it does not want to decide these cases and wants to avoid them, then it will figure out a rationale to do that. If you think you can figure this out by looking at the law, you are wrong. It has to do with what the court wants to do,
and
period.
Maybe we can get Justice Roberts, because he'll see the Edie Windsor case, it's just involving taxes, as he did in the case around Obamacare.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of bicameral and all that stuff, you've heard of David Blankenhorn. He runs something called the Institute for American Values. They make marriage their big issue. He came out for same-sex marriage in an op-ed a couple of months ago, and now he is inviting gay people into his organization and people who support same-sex marriage. Of course, he's lost a lot of money from the right wing as a result of this. Cardinal George from Chicago resigned from his board, but he's getting a lot of mostly gay conservatives.
So did the guy at Princeton, the creepy guy at Princeton. Yeah. All right, well, let's get on to some real marriage news developments. The Rhode Island, and we're doing them first, yes. Rhode Island, the House of Representatives there, the full House has passed the marriage bill in Rhode Island 51-19.
That's pretty well. Of course, Gordon Fox is the Speaker of the House. He's openly gay, and usually.
Yeah, but last time around, he stopped it from even coming up for a vote. And the climate is different. The momentum is on our side, and he's pushing ahead, and he got a 51-19 vote.
He did.
So let's take a look at the local news report from Rhode Island covering the passage of the marriage bill.
Latest developments on the fight to legalize same-sex marriage in Rhode Island. House of Representatives passed the bill allowing gay and lesbian couples to wed by an overwhelming majority last night. Final vote 51-19. Supporters say it's time for Rhode Island to embrace marriage equality.
I'm really excited about the history that we've made today. I think we really continue to show the momentum that this issue has, not just in Rhode Island, but across the country.
House members debated the bill for just 2 hours. Now the bill moves on to the Senate, where it's expected to face much tougher opposition. Eyewitness News reporter Shantae Lands joining us live in the newsroom this morning with more on when the Senate might take up that bill.
Patrick, there's no specific timeline, but senators tell us they're in no rush. Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed said it could be months before the Senate takes up the same-sex marriage legislation. Senator Weed has opposed legalizing same-sex marriage in the past. We caught up with her at an economic summit event last night.
I certainly congratulate Speaker Fox on the successful passage of this legislation this evening. I know that this has been the single most important issue to him this session.
Senator Paiva-Weed says the Senate has to get through its legislation first. Right now, they're concentrating on job creations and the economy. Reporting live in the newsroom, Shantae Lance, Eyewitness News.
She will allow a vote eventually, but a progressive Democrat, but who is
in other respects,
but who is wedded to her strict Catholic views opposing same-sex marriage.
Whatever happened to the separation of church and state?
Well, we could do 10 shows on that every month.
Yes, indeed. Well, anyway, Rhode Island is the last New England state, but to do this, apparently seen as the most conservative, but they're doing it.
A marriage bill has been introduced in the House and Senate in Hawaii, and a local poll shows support among the people of Hawaii for full marriage rights, 55 to 39%. So.
And as you said at the top of the show, we have made progress on civil unions in Colorado. We can't do marriage there because they got an amendment against it.
Right, but the Senate Judiciary Committee approved civil unions, and there's a very interesting player in this. I didn't even do that on purpose. Kenneth the Manimal Fareed, a star with the Denver Nuggets basketball team, decided to make not a public service announcement, a commercial, or a video in favor of the civil unions
3
bill,
minutes.
because
he's got 2 lesbian moms.
Yes, he does. So here they all are.
Hello, I'm Kenneth Fareed. The mom to my right is Mahasan Fareed, and the mom to my left is my birth mother, Wadia Fareed. And basically, I support civil union. Well, they do too because they're married, so I hope they would. But I really do support civil union because of the fact that it gives people gays and lesbians the right to make decisions on their own if they want to get married, and let them choose who they want to be with.
We had our ups, we had our downs, as Kenneth explained, you know, but our love for each other has always been strong, is still steady, even to this day, 11 years later.
I was real sick. We were supposed to have been the #1 person to get married in New Jersey, and we wound up being #5 because I kept getting sick. But we are #5 couple, gay couple that's married, and we've been together 11 years, so it was a long road, but we're here to tell about it.
I personally, when they first got married, I was kind of mad because I wasn't there. I was really upset because I wanted to see the matrimony and them two get married and just the beauty of it all. But I was trying to do my thing at college, so they understood. And my mother was always getting sick, so she could not wait, I guess, any longer, or she was running in and back and forth in and out of the hospital, so it's kind of upsetting and depressing for me. But with Sister Mahasan, she always was there for her. And she, even if my mother, when she get crazy at times and wanna kill everybody, it seems like, she still was there for her. And that's what made me love her that much more, because without her being there for her, it's just, I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't be in the position I'm in, and I wouldn't be able to be telling my story today, because I had to go back home and take care of my mother. But I was really happy that she did walk into her life, and that happy day still remains in my mind deeply. And no matter what, I'm gonna always call her mother. And this lady right here, yeah, she's just gonna be old lady. Nah, she's still gonna be my mother no matter what. And nobody could ever tell me I can't have two mothers, because I really do.
Aww.
Must have had a great effect because the bill passed. Thank you very much.
But, Kenneth, don't despair. You can still watch them get married, because they're not married, because the ceremony they had in New Jersey was a civil union, because marriage is not legal in New Jersey. So this is a classic case of the confusion of civil unions and marriage.
Right.
So,
well, and it's not legal in Hawaii either, which is why Jim Nabors and his partner of, it says companion of 38 years, Stan Cadwallader, they went to Seattle to get married.
We have a picture of that
on January 15th.
You'll recognize Jim on the left.
We've always said Jim Nabors is gay. He just didn't say it. But I have to say, some of the statements that he gave out in this, well, you know, he said, he has no plans to get involved in the marriage debate after this. I'm not a debater. Everybody's got their own opinion. I'm not an activist. I never got involved in any of this. I'm just taking the rights that all the rest of you was blood, sweat, and tears for, which is outrageous, you know.
Well, luckily, because he is a public figure, we're going to use him anyway. So whether he wants to get involved or not, it doesn't matter, because there's already big coverage all over the world, including a huge story that you just read from the Hawaii newspaper, where they are now debating marriage rights.
Now, you know, Jim, you might have helped yourself if you came out a long time ago, because there's a new study from the University of Montreal that says lesbians, gays, and bisexuals who are out to others have less of a stress-related hormone, less anxiety, depression, and burnout. And listen to this, gay and bisexual men had lower depressive symptoms and allostatic levels than heterosexual men.
Yeah, the problem is that the same study found lesbian and bisexual women more stressed than straight women. Well, but here's the deal. This was a study of 87 people.
All right.
All of whom were in their 20s, and that's to cover straight men, straight women, gay men, lesbian women, bisexuals. 87 people?
But you're not trying to discourage people from coming out.
I certainly am not. Now, a couple of other marriage notes. In Wyoming, a legislative committee rejected a proposed marriage bill but okayed a domestic partners scheme. Delaware is beginning to hold town hall meetings to strategize about pushing a marriage bill. There's a new business coalition that has been put together to support repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act, whether the Supreme Court gets rid of it or not, and that includes Marriott, which is a Mormon-owned corporation, eBay, Thomson Reuters, and then there's the whole debate now playing out in the Huffington Post about going back to the Chick-fil-A controversy and Dan Cathy, their president, and his support for organizations that are fighting our marriage rights. So a gay activist, Shane Windmeyer, who runs Campus Pride, and they got involved because the Chick-fil-A's are often on college campuses.
Even at NYU.
So he wrote something this week about how he has become friendly with Dan Cathy, went to the Chick-fil-A bowl with him, and that Dan Cathy was saying, you know, was engaging in this great private getting to know you process, and that Chick-fil-A was no longer giving money to Focus on the Family or Exodus International or...
What about Dan Cathy himself?
Well, it turns out that there is a difference between the corporate giving and the foundation giving, and one is public and one isn't, and even some of the organizations that they're still giving to then give the money to the bad group, the really bad groups. The bad groups give to the really bad groups. So, Shane, we appreciate your efforts, but I don't think Dan has really turned the corner yet.
Okay, on marriage?
Yeah, that's
well,
it.
We're going to talk about mayors now, but before we get to Chris Quinn, who's running for mayor in New York and would be the mayor of the largest city in the world so far.
No, not the largest.
That's what I heard.
We're not.
No. Out gay mayor, the largest city to have an out gay mayor if she wins in New York.
Because New York is not the largest city in the world.
I know. Anyway, we told you about Vico, Kentucky,
yes,
passing
2 weeks ago
a rights ordinance, and we didn't really know too much about this other than the fact that the mayor is openly gay. This is the smallest municipality in Kentucky. He's the local hairdresser. They love him.
Yes.
They protect him.
Yeah.
And when he said, I want to do a little ordinance around this, I think it was his idea, there it goes. They did it. And it protects municipal employees in this town of like 335.
I don't think it's even that big.
335.
Okay.
That's the population.
Okay. Yes, we like him. We like the town.
Oh, but we didn't even say what his name was. Johnny Cummings.
Thank you, Johnny. But yes, the yin and the yang, moving to New York City. Christine Quinn, who's been an occasional guest on this show, out lesbian for many, many years, leader of the city council here, married her partner Kim Catullo, now her wife, last year. A big public ceremony. Recently endorsed by the Victory Fund, by Emily's List, by Empire State Pride Agenda. But this week's big headline about Chris is this picture on the cover of New York Magazine.
Well.
Which is not how we're used to seeing Chris Quinn.
No.
And the New York Post was so taken by this picture that they call it Dracula.
The New York Post
will
most likely not be supporting Chris Quinn for mayor.
No, I doubt they will.
I mean, Chris is leading in the polls. She's at the Democratic...
By a big margin.
In the Democratic primary, she's got 35 points, as opposed to her nearest rival who's only got about 11 or 12. Mm-hmm. So she's leading. I mean, but there is a Republican who's running, Joe Lhota, among others.
Yeah.
So the race is up in the air, but she's leading. And she's also got a campaign, she's got a biography coming out that she wrote with her old friend Eric Marcus. I don't know what the name of the book is, but yes, it's called With Patience and Fortitude, which are the name of the library lions that are out there, the stone ones out there in New York.
At the New York Public Library.
Yeah.
At any rate,
you can read all about Chris Quinn.
We will follow this mayor's race.
Yes, we will.
In other political news, the Senate in Virginia passed a sexual orientation non-discrimination law for state employees. I don't know that it's going to get much farther than that, but that was a good, at least symbolic
in the House
thing
of
to do.
Delegates.
North Dakota legislature is considering a sexual orientation and gender identity and expression non-discrimination bill, which seems to have some chance of passing.
They also ought to do some workplace safety rules, from what I'm reading about North Dakota, where
well,
people are being massacred
it's an oil
by
rush.
working in the oil rush.
It's an oil rush. It's like Alaska was 40 years ago or whatever. In Connecticut, the out gay judge Andrew McDonald, a colleague of the governor's, has been confirmed to the Supreme Court there. But in Florida, in Hillsborough County, the council there has rejected a domestic partner registry, unlike neighboring Pinellas County, which passed a domestic partner registry recently.
So despite all the good news, there's plenty of work to be done.
In Maryland, the legislature is now, having passed marriage equality last year, will now take up gender identity and expression non-discrimination for a statewide bill covering employment, housing, and public accommodations. Things are really moving fast there. But the big political news of the week actually was when John Kerry was confirmed as Secretary of State, and the his Senate seat officially opened up for a temporary appointment for Massachusetts.
Everybody wanted it.
Yes,
including Barney Frank,
who made no secret of it. He, in fact, asked the governor to appoint him. But the governor, Deval Patrick, said, nope, I'm appointing my longtime friend and colleague, Mo Cowan, who is a lawyer and an official of some sort.
It's an interim appointment because...
it's a very quick interim appointment because they're holding a primary on April 30th and an election on June 5th. But this is the yin and yang to the governor of South Carolina, Nikki, what's her name? Haley, appointing the African-American conservative Representative Tim Scott to the Senate, making him the only African-American in the United States Senate. Well, now Deval Patrick has countered with a progressive African-American temporary appointment.
And of course, the favorite for the Massachusetts seat is Scott Brown, not the most anti-gay Republican by any stretch of the imagination, but still a Republican who would add to their minority.
Ed Markey is expected to, longtime Democratic representative, good guy, is expected to be
good guy who's never had a hard race in his life, and he better get his fighting clothes on if he's going to beat Scott Brown.
I am curious as to whether the governor not appointing Barney makes Barney say, well, the hell with you, I'll run, yeah.
Well,
I think he wasn't appointed because Deval Patrick thought he was too big a personality and would run, even though he said he only wanted the job temporarily. I thought at first maybe Deval Patrick wants the job, and is.
They rarely appoint themselves, or they're allowed to.
It's too quick.
They're allowed to.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we got some crime news.
Yeah.
We told you about the mysterious murder of Lou Rispoli, a gay activist in Queens, some months ago, and nobody's ever really figured out why this happened. But now the police have released. No. God, you don't have this. Maybe you don't have the suspects, the police sketches, the sketches of the two suspects. Maybe you don't have it. There they are. This is as much as we have. Where they were seen from a distance. This is this is what whoever saw them from a distance was able to piece together.
I'm still trying to figure out whether that's really two different people or one person,
or the same person.
Well, in two sketches.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
All right, then, but now we have some more current news about crime, including in Queens and Manhattan. In Queens, David Ranhel, a gay man age 53, was found dead in his apartment in Jackson Heights on Saturday, January 26th.
That's the picture, yes.
Yes, he's a teacher, a beloved teacher out there in Flushing. Lived in Jackson Heights. It's believed to be a homicide, and he may have met his assailant online, which is why we want to put up the
Anti-Violence Project.
If you go to avp.org, avp.org, not assigned sex, it's another one.
No.
This is about
domestic.
No, not that one either. We'll get to it. It's the
online dating. There we go.
Online dating safety. Go to avp.org and go into their site about what you can do to protect yourself in an online dating situation to make it a safer situation. There are things that you can do so that you don't, just invite a stranger over to your house who you've met online. Go meet them at a coffee shop. There's all kinds of things online there to protect yourself.
And AVP reports that, in fact, they are getting increased reports of violence in online dating situations.
Well, it's a very exploitable situation.
Absolutely.
Everybody's online. This is how everybody meets these days.
We had that big murder case last year in Brooklyn that went on and was a horrible thing of a guy being entrapped, basically, by an online seducer.
We need to have our guard up. And there are things that you can do that will prevent you from being murdered. Or from being hurt. And a lot of it has to do with making sure that the person actually is seen by other people with you beforehand. That's why people agree, a lot of people agree in online dating, to meet at a neutral site. Just go downstairs to the coffee shop or wherever you can go, and a public place, or if you meet somebody at a bar, we used to say introduce them to the bartender,
because
so that they're seen. It deters them.
Exactly. It can make a big, big difference in scaring them off of any plans of robbery or
And
violence.
we don't know exactly what happened to Charles Romo in Manhattan on January 28th, but he was found dead in his apartment in Hamilton Heights. He had been beaten and bound. It looks like it was a sexual situation, and one of the suspects is a lover of the victim.
Part of this also, yes, and domestic violence is also in the news. There's a strange case from the West Coast where a former player for the San Francisco 49ers and the Oakland Raiders, Kwame Harris, 30 years old, was arrested for felony domestic violence for having beaten up his ex-boyfriend in a restaurant parking lot. And the thing that everybody noticed about this was no one knew Kwame Harris was gay. And this was how he outed himself, an ex-NFL player.
It's not the way you want to come out.
No, and they had some stupid argument.
You shouldn't wait until you get married like Jim Nabors either. Do it now.
There is a big new report from the Centers for Disease Control about domestic violence that compares some of the rates between straight couples, gay couples, lesbian couples, includes bisexuals in this. Bisexual women were attacked more than lesbians, who were attacked more than straight women. It's a very small sample again, but it's an interesting report to look at. So if you want to look at this domestic violence report, you can go to cdc.gov/violence prevention.
And I want to know if there's more violence if they're out and if they're not out.
Well, good luck with that.
Okay.
And of course, the other case lingering is this Manti Te'o, Notre Dame football player. Dueling talk show appearances. Manti Te'o goes on the Katie Couric show where she says to him, I thought very forthrightly, are you gay? There's a lot of talk about that this was to cover up your...
He says far from it.
He says, I'm not gay, far from it, far from it. And then on the Dr. Phil show, who shows up but the guy who was hoaxing him, who admits that he is gay or confused, that he's deeply in love with Manti, and it was him on the phone pretending to be this online girlfriend.
He did a good job.
Oh my God.
You never know who you're talking to.
Be careful out there.
Please.
And
I'm not against online relationships with real people.
Yeah. Well, here's an example of forthrightness. Jacob Rudolph, a high school senior in Parsippany, New Jersey, is getting noticed this week because he, at an awards ceremony, came out to 300 classmates and sort of following up on the Jodie Foster speech. He did a great job.
Yes, he did.
So good for him. We're running out of time. We should move
International news?
Sure.
Thousands rallied in Paris for same-sex marriage. They're looking at passing that bill in May.
63% supported. They have begun debate in the parliament. The Russian military is going to check people for tattoos to find sexual deviance, but the Russian State Duma has passed the No Promo Homo bill on its first reading by, there was one person voting against it. It needs 2 more readings and a signature from President Putin. Protests taking place, arrests, but this would be a national law against any mention of gay people.
Honduran gay leader Pepe Palacios is in the United States on a tour. He's going to be in New York this coming week. we've told you about all the troubles in Honduras, how the government there has been murdering gay people and allowed murders to go on. Andy Thayer, our old friend from Chicago, is taking him around, has done an interview with him that is posted online, and if you
on YouTube,
if you are on our email list, I will send you that link.
Meanwhile, the Honduras cops and government have apologized for the raid on the gay bar. The Polish parliament was debating a civil unions bill but said no to it. The British marriage bill debate in parliament starts on February 5th.
And again, the thing about it is it allows gays to get married, but it doesn't allow straight people to get civil partnerships, which is giving us more rights.
In Ontario, Canada, out lesbian Kathleen Wynne has been elected the leader of the Liberal Party there, and therefore Premier of Ontario.
Yes.
Congratulations to her. And in Singapore, the Prime Minister says, oh, yeah, don't worry about getting rid of the anti-sodomy law. It's been there a long time. It's okay. AIDS news.
Well, that's what Bush said. It's traditional values.
Yes, exactly. In Arizona, a Democratic representative is proposing prison terms for knowing transmission of STDs sexually, or by organ donation or sharing needles. You're going to prison.
We lost a hero this week, Dave Purchase from Tacoma. He led the needle exchange movement. He did it on the streets, risked prison sentences to do it, but quickly got the support of the police and the government, and it was funded, and unlike in a lot of other places, including New York. So he just passed away at the age of 73.
Entertainment news.
Well, I also want to note the passing of a guy named John Edwin Cook from, I believe it's Dallas, yes, who was he and his partner were long-term survivors of, long-time viewers of the program, but he had HIV for 31 years and survived to this point.
A lot of people have.
He got it from a transfusion from an operation many, many years ago. So condolences to his partner.
Okay.
Yes.
Congratulations to Shelley Wright, country singer, now pregnant with twins. She and her wife, Lauren Blitzer Wright. And I noticed that Shelley's movie, Wish Me Away, is still playing on Showtime. Well worth taking a look. And Elton John and David Furnish are now the parents of a second son from a surrogate.
Elijah Joseph Daniel
They
Furnish
wanted a
John.
second, credits are running, they wanted a second son so the kids could support each other. And how about that Sissy Houston? I would absolutely have been pissed off if I knew Whitney was a lesbian. Well, too bad.
And Martin Moran's All the Rage. I wouldn't say it's as great as his thing. Last play when he came out about being molested as a kid, but it is a compelling monologue.
And Chris Brown is beating people up again, this time our hero, Frank Ocean.
And my favorite play, Vanya and Sonia and Mush and Spike, is coming to Broadway.
We're done. We'll see you next week.
Bye.